Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Equity Alliance Equity Series. My name is Wafal Khalifa, and I work for Destination Medical Center as the Equitable Development Coordinator. I would like to welcome you to the November episode of the Equity Series. And just a quick background of what is the Equity Alliance. Our purpose is to accelerate equitable change in our community and to make an impact through disparities, impact in disparities in our community through reparation, restoration, and reformation. And if you're interested to know more about all the episodes that we presented in this year, please feel free to go and visit the Destination Medical Center YouTube channel, where you will find all the episodes that we have shared in the community. And if your organization is interested in learning more about the Equity Alliance and how you can join the Equity Alliance, feel free to contact me, Wafal Khalifa, or Chow Matala. And Chow serves City of Rochester as the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Director. Now for today's episode, the title for today's episode is Business Practices, a Key Lever to Drive Equity in Workforce and Community. And our presenter today is Garfield Bowen. And Garfield is the Vice President of Social, Environmental, and Environmental Justice at 3M. We're so delighted and excited to have Garfield, as he will provide us some practical tips on how companies can create a strategy to deliver an equity ambition. And Garfield will share his learnings from 3M's journey for the past 3.5 years. I hope that you all get to enjoy the presentation, and I encourage everyone to utilize the chat function in this meeting here or in Zoom. Feel free to share your comments, questions. We'll be making sure to read them and share them with Garfield. Welcome, Garfield.
Thank you so much, Rafa. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to share space. I think these spaces are sacred that we have to talk about a topic like equity because it's important. And so appreciate you and Chow for reaching out and extending the invitation to be here on the eve of Thanksgiving, no doubt, and folks are showing up. So for all of you on the call, a big shout out to you for taking time to share space with us. Now, I'm very casual in my presentation, and so feel free to interrupt as I go. As Wafa mentioned, use the chat, or just come on camera or raise a hand and articulate a question or a point of view that you have throughout the presentation. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. But before I do, let me just tell you a little bit about who I am. I am a Jamaican native. So I grew up in Jamaica. That's my homeland. And about 17 going 18 years ago, my wife received a Fulbright scholarship to pursue her doctoral studies at the University of Minnesota. And so that's what led us to move from Jamaica to Minnesota. Our plan was just to be here for 4 years. We're doing four times 4 and counting. And it's truly been a delight to be here. I worked at the University of Minnesota for 8.5 years. Prior to that, I was in Jamaica for 11 years, all in the information communication technology space. So I'm really a technology guy as the foundation of my career. And then 9 years ago, I joined 3M. And when I joined 3M, the world was different, right? Now in corporate America, and leading a number of spaces for 3M. And so no longer in IT, but just grateful that I now have the opportunity to lead the portfolio that I have for the company. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and Wafa, you can let me know when it's coming through in slideshow view.
Yes, it's
awesome.
working.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Great. So business practices, right? It's really about how businesses, show up, right? How they show up and what role does equity play in helping businesses deliver on their purpose and their promise to their stakeholders. And so I will share a little bit about this through the vantage point of 3M's experience, and then open to hear your own experience as well. So I'll talk about our corporate purpose. Then I'll talk about our social justice strategy and our commitments, articulate a few proof points for how you can embed equity based on our experience at 3M. And then I want to close up with a personal model to advocate for equity in your everyday, right? Whether you're in a company or not, how you can actually lift up this own notion of equity. I'll start with our purpose as a company. 3M is about unlocking the power of its people, of the ideas that we have, and the science to reimagine what's possible for people everywhere. So that's why we exist as a company. As I've mentioned, I've been with the company for 9.5 years. I've done a number of things in my career over those 9.5 years at 3M. I led a project management organization in a high-tech business. I led global quality. I was a master black belt in manufacturing, driving continuous improvement. I moved over from that into research and development, leading global commercialization for one of the largest divisions in the company. Then I did another role in research and development, global R&D operations, and leading the project management office for one of our divisions in the company. And 2020 happened, right? I was in R&D when 2020 happened, when George Floyd was murdered not too far from where we're headquartered. And I live in the western side of the cities with my wife and 2 sons. And it was a time of great mourning, if you will. There was angst. And there was just a lot of heartbreak that exists. And even talking about it now, it just takes me back to that moment. 3M, like many other companies, wrestled with how do we respond? What do we do? How do we accelerate the work that we have been doing over the last couple of years? And one of the things that they did was to create a role to lead social justice for the company. A bold move, right? A different move than what I've seen many other organizations do. But I think our CEO at the time said, if we're going to be the change we want to see in the world, we need to have a leader that is positioned to orchestrate across the company to drive change and drive change in a way that was going to persist. And so they appointed me into that role. And I'll tell you a little backstory. When the Chief Human Resources Officer reached out to me, it was in the middle of COVID. I didn't jump and say, yes, yes, yes. Because again, I was in this point, at this point in my life where I was grieving, like many of you. And I said to her, can I have some time to think about it? And as a person of faith, I need some time to pray about it. I got 24 hours, and that was enough time. My wife was here. I ran upstairs and I chatted with her, and she was supportive of the idea, although we didn't know what this was that the company was asking me to do. And I went on a walk and I spoke to one of my mentors. And I recall it was a 30-minute conversation. And I recall my mentor saying to me, Garfield, if not you, then who? If not now, then when? And I think of everything she said that day, that was what resonated with me, that although I was grieving with so many others, how do I turn that pain into purpose? And so I said yes to this role. And now it's been 3.5 years since I've been leading this on behalf of the company. Now, I will tell you that social justice is this ambiguous space that the company hasn't quite leaned into before, but it was building up on things that we've done. And so it was really an agenda to drive equity across our entire business ecosystem. And when we talk about equity, we talk about dismantling systems and barriers that have existed for a long time that would cause specific individuals to not thrive. So while others are thriving, others aren't. So how do we remove those barriers and create a system that would allow, in particular, those that have been historically marginalized to now thrive along with everyone else? And so the agenda was a three-part strategy. One was to drive equity in our workplaces, making sure that our workplace reflects our consumers and creates a culture of belonging for everyone. The second pillar of this strategy was to drive equity in our communities. How do we leverage all of our capabilities to ensure that we're creating economic wealth and pathways for underrepresented communities to realize wealth for themselves and their families and their communities? And then the third pillar of the strategy is driving equity in our business practices, looking at our entire value chain from end to end to make sure there's access and opportunity, broadly, in particular, again, for those that have been under-resourced, underrepresented, underinvested in for generations. Beneath that, you will see what we're calling enterprise work streams. So these are project teams that had a specific mandate with a specific leader and a specific team, orchestrating work to make sure that we're delivering on some bold objectives, some of which I will share in my next slide. I have had the pleasure of having 150 people on lateral assignments across these project teams, doing the hard work, rolling their sleeves up and doing the hard work. The ones that are highlighted in blue are the ones where I'm going to do a double click on to talk a little more about. But if you have questions on any of the other spaces that I haven't highlighted, I'm more than happy to talk about those as we have time today. So 3M has committed to build upon our longstanding commitments to accelerate equity. And so on the left are those longstanding commitments, right? We've set out to increase diverse representation of everyone in management across all roles globally. In 2020, we added an additional goal to say, okay, we want to double the representation of Black and Hispanic talents at every level in our US workforce. And some may say, but why did you call out those two populations in particular, right? I'm going to anticipate you're asking that question and answer it for you. Again, as a science-based company, we believe in letting the data lead where we go. And so we did a lot of research. And what we realized is that for positions that we hire for across the United States, we were not seeing the same reflection of those that were available in the talent in the marketplace show up at 3M, right? So there were more Black and Hispanic talent in the workplace, in the workforce, and they weren't reflected in the company. So then we said, okay, since we were so significantly under-indexed in those two populations, let us have a goal and be focused around how we can double that representation. And we did it because we knew what was available in the marketplace. So we said, okay, doubling is a stretch, but it's achievable with intention. And so that's how we ended up setting that particular goal. The second one was around, how we leverage our philanthropic investments. And we've always, done that in three areas: education, environment, and community. And then we stepped up our game to strategically invest an incremental $50 million to address racial opportunity gaps through workforce development initiatives. And the way we did it this time was different than how we've done it before. We brought together community leaders who have proximity to those in community to have them advise us on how do we deploy these $50 million. So we weren't just about to write a check and walk away. We wanted to make sure that as we invest these precious resources in our communities, that they were going to do the work, right, that we expected. And so we we formed a community coalition, and this community coalition had folks from the St. Paul Public Schools, which is the most diverse public school in our state. Over 120 languages are spoken in that public school system alone. We've included voices from Minnesota State colleges and universities, right? We had individuals from the Center for Economic Inclusion represented. We had Ujamaa Place, an organization that help formerly incarcerated Black men get reintroduced into society, right? And the list goes on, right? So if you search for the 3M Community Coalition online, you will find all of those individuals who were part of the initial round of this community coalition. It has now expanded to include a number of other leaders in our communities. The third one on here is around STEM and skill trades. Again, as a science-based company, this is important to us, but we've never really set a goal, right? We've always advocated, but now we set a tangible goal. We want to create 5 million STEM and skill trades learning experiences globally for underrepresented students by 2025. Now it was with more precision, right? And so the moment of the unfortunate murder of George Floyd now has created a movement that was precise about how we were going to show up to deliver on our commitments. And the second was around, the fourth on here was around supply diversity, right? How do we create access and opportunity to for underrepresented and businesses, and in particular diverse suppliers? So we've been compliant as a government contractor. We've had to be compliant. And so we said, okay, let's move from compliance to be more ambitious. So we established a goal to double our spend or book of business with diverse suppliers. And we've done that in a way to build capacity and capability. And I'll talk more about that in just a few moments. Nice segue into that program. We recognize that as we work with diverse suppliers, one of the challenges that we've uncovered is that diverse suppliers several times are smaller, and they may not have all of the resources available to them to be able to compete with others, right? And so they can compete on scale and on size and efficiency and some of those other areas just because of the nature of the size of their business. Not because they don't have the chops to do it, but they're just small and they need support. So we created a first of its kind game changer program, is what we called it. And it was really about going deeper in the ecosystem to build capacity and capability with those diverse suppliers through 4 levers, right? We wanted to make sure that we enable them to grow, right? We want to be able to advocate for them internally and externally. We wanted to mentor them, provide mentorship to help them solve the business challenge that they have so that it can unlock their full potential, and provide specific education around business acumen and leadership, peer engagement, and other areas of education that they've identified as a gap. And then we come alongside them and help them to really take off. And I'm proud to say the first year, we've done it twice now. The first year of the program, 75% of those that participated in our Game Changer program more than doubled their book of business with 3M. So it worked, but it takes hard work, right? It really took hard work, because now we're talking about 3Mers with specific expertise would be matched up with these diverse suppliers to really help them unlock what's the issue area that they're having. Some may say, okay, we don't know how to compete on even writing a good proposal. Okay, we assembled a team to help them that have those capabilities to be able to do that, right? We have some, challenges to scale our manufacturing operations. Okay, we got some folks with manufacturing expertise to partner with them over a 6-month period to help them unlock that. So we have a program that's called our 3M Impact Program, where we get talented 3Mers with specific subject matter expertise and pair those expertise up with these diverse suppliers and the areas that they've articulated as a concern, and the model works. Again, it's one business at a time, but we know it works. We've now been able to unlock capacity and capability of these suppliers. So then I'll talk about, when you talk about business practices, that was diverse supplier, supplier diversity around creating economic wealth. Now we're going to talk about equity in innovation. Again, as an innovation company, science-based, we innovate, right? We put products, new products out into the market, every day. And so how do we then create products that have equity in mind? And that's what equity in innovation is all about. Embedding social equity and accessibility into what we're calling our sustainability value commitments. Every new product that we launch at 3M must have a sustainability value commitment. It's a requirement. We've now layered into that requirement equity as a consideration for the teams to make as part of launching a new product. So during the discussions that these project teams have about the sustainability value commitments, social equity and accessibility are now built into that process. So I'll give you some illustrative examples. On the front end, right? You're innovating. If you can think about it, you have to have a problem that you want to solve, right? So there's a need that exists, or maybe you want to take folks on a journey. Sometimes you don't even know. The consumer doesn't even know that they have a problem, but we want to design a product that will get them into the future and to make their lives easier. So and we call them NPI, new product introduction teams. So that's maybe a 3M vernacular. And so we ask, these teams ponder these questions. Does the team have diverse members? So that's the first thing we want folks to understand. Who is at the table? When we're coming up with these ideas of the things we want to do, who is at the table? Do we have diversity of gender and age, right? And race, ethnicity? We want to challenge ourselves on that. We all know that studies show that diverse teams generate better outcomes. And so that's why we make sure that's one of the first questions on the front end. Assess who you're going to be putting on the team. When we're doing the insights, who are we collecting the insights from? Do we have an inclusive group, right? How will the team bring in external viewpoints? And are we engaging diverse subject matter experts for brainstorming? Again, it's the who we're bringing in, who are we getting insights from? That will help us from very early in the process before we design, right? To make sure we've got diversity at the table. Now, when we're in the thick of developing the product, there are another set of questions that we want the teams to be thinking about. How can we test the product concept with a diverse group to identify areas for inclusion, right? Can we assure the input from those diverse groups were incorporated into the process? Can we leverage diverse suppliers? We just spoke about diverse suppliers. When you're creating a new product, it's often a new value chain that you're actually creating. Who's going to be part of that value chain? Where the raw materials are going to come from, right? So you're actually determining who you're going to do business with long term, right? And so we want to make sure that diverse suppliers are considered as you're developing your new product. So these are ways that we have embedded social equity into our innovation process. You may recall something called COVID, right? And the 3M manufacturers N95, and those were really brought to bear during that time. And you can, from the design of those, right? We made sure that the design of those were fit tested to different sizes and shapes of faces. So it would be inclusive, right? Not just for a certain profile, of consumers, but a broad base. So we don't want to exclude others. It was with an inclusive design to make sure that that happens. We have a healthcare business. One of the things that we've done now is that we make sure that bandages, right, are not, one color bandages. There are different bandage colors now for different skin types, skin colors, right? So those are some of the ways that 3M is really taking social equity to heart as we're innovating, and there is more to come. I don't think we've yet fully unlocked the power of this body of work. The third proof point that I have is how 3M has really rallied around fully leveraging our capabilities to drive outcomes in our communities. We want to leverage our people, the expertise, and I did talk about it a little bit, the products that we manufacture with the philanthropic investments, along with key partners to make a difference in our communities. We have 4 businesses right now. We have a healthcare business, and that business is focused on driving healthcare equity, right? So we do know that there are immense disparities that exist, health disparities that exist in our communities. And so how do we leverage the capabilities of our healthcare business to focus on social determinants of health? We have a transportation electronics business that's really focused on urban safety and mobility, right? We do know that in underrepresented communities, children die or are hit down at a higher rate than in any other community because they don't have the basic infrastructure to navigate the roadways. They don't have access to personal cars, right? So they've got to navigate those roadways. So we use our products and the expertise of our people to go in, and we'll put pavement markings down. We'll put temporary traffic signs down in these communities, sometimes in school zones, sometimes not, to just make sure that folks in underrepresented communities can navigate the roadways safely. And we do this all the way over to India as well. As a global company, this work of equity translates beyond the boundaries of the United States. We have a consumer business that's focused on driving equity in home ownership, partnering with Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity, right? We do know that there's a huge disparity between Black white owners, Black homeowners, and white homeowners. There's the largest gap in the United States exists in our very state of Minnesota. And so 3M's consumer business says, we can tackle that. We have a number of products that can go into a house to make it a home. Let's do that, and let's leverage the hand and hearts of our teams to actually go and help on the construction site. And so those are some of the things that we're doing. Safety and Industrial is focused on skill trades. Our customers are telling us that the workforce of the future needs to be upskilled, right? And there's a shortage of labor that we have. And so our Safety and Industrial Business Group is really focused on skill trades. And as a company, science-based company, STEM equity is a broad focus that we have. I spoke about the $50 million incremental investments that we've made. There's a lot on this slide. Here's the one takeaway. For every $1 of that $50 million that we invest in our communities, we're seeing an almost $3 of social return. And that's amazing. Again, 3M wants to understand, are the dollars going to work? Yes, the dollars are going to work. They're dismantling the systems that have existed for far too long, and they're creating a new way so that access and opportunity can be created for those who need it the most. And that's the essence of this very busy slide, right? And there's more of this too in our DEI report that we published this year, but we are very proud that we're seeing this kind of social return. The value is being realized through increased lifetime earnings, individuals avoiding the justice system, avoiding public assistance, improved health, increased assets, increased job benefits, quality of life, reduced school costs, increased employee retention. In essence, I call it the love that keeps on giving, right? And so this is how you make your investments work for the communities and the people that you want them to work for. It takes intention. And so we used a partner, Ecotone, on the bottom left to help us to do this kind of analysis. Through all the partners that receive funding, They actually have to provide information to us on how those dollars are flowing, on how many folks are impacted, and and do some research to understand what's the trajectory of those investments. And so we're able to understand what the social return on our investments has been. As I get close to the end, I just want to say that 3M has, I'm really proud that all of the work that we're doing at 3M is being recognized. We didn't set out to do it to be recognized, but we are being recognized for the work that we're doing as in equity. And to receive this recognition from the Center for Economics Inclusion Racial Equity Dividends Index, I think is remarkable. The Center for Economic Inclusion, I think they've probably shared with this group before, they have this index that really looks at 7 dimensions of equity, from leadership, hiring, culture and retention, procurement, products and services, philanthropy, and public policy. And of those 7 dimensions, 3M has been demonstrated as a leader in 4 of the 7: leadership, culture, procurement, and philanthropy. So I really feel proud that the work that we're doing is sticking, it's taking root, we are seeing the return on the benefit, and there is more to do. You can see in the bottom right in the charts, for all the companies across Minnesota that participated in the Racial Equity Dividends Index, there is an average score of 37.2, or a peer set, large manufacturing companies are 53.2, 3M is at 65.7. That's out of a total of 100. So I'll be the first to say, although we're recognized as a leader today, we have more work to do tomorrow. And so that's kind of what I wanted to let you know, that we're on a journey. We haven't arrived. And so we'll continue to press forward because we know the importance of driving equity as a core lever of our business practice. And this is where I leave you with how to personally advocate for equity wherever you are at, right? And we can be agitators, if you will, right? To make a difference in the spaces that you occupy. So this is a model that I dreamt up earlier this year, because I've done so much work in equity, in particular over the last 3.5 years. And I just call it M squared plus I squared model. And it starts at the top left. We need to have an equity mindset that must be fostered, right? And it can be fostered in a number of ways, right? It's, whether that's reading, books around equity or listening to podcasts or whatever it is, but there has to be a mindset shift to even recognize that this is essential to the future, not only of businesses, but of our society. The second piece of the model is around building your muscle. Muscle memory is important. So it's actually putting things into practice, right? So you've learned it, right? You have a new mindset. The mindset only works if you're going to be putting it into practice. Make it practical. Make it your own. Do something different. If you hear of, someone being treated unfairly, what do? You show up. If you're in a business meeting, right, and someone has been disrespected, irrespective of who it is, but we often see that happening towards women and people with disabilities, or folks who have are of a different race than the majority race. Step in, use your power, and do something about it. When we do this work around equity, there is impact that we have. And I think we all need to understand, what impact are we having, whether it's on an individual level or it's on an organizational level. What's that impact? And that's why the social return on investment is one way for us to understand at a corporate level the impact we're having around this topic of equity, and keep improving, improve continuously. So foster that mindset, build the muscle, understand the impact you have, and work relentlessly to improve continuously. That's all I've got prepared for you. Thank you so much, Wafa. It's been a delight to share space with you. And now I will pause and open up for discussion, debate, and any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Garfield. I'm seeing some comments and questions coming through the chat, but as they're coming, the first time that I've met you was in the Center for Economic Inclusion Summit that they held this past summer, and you were presenting at a panel, which I really enjoyed. I would love for you, before we get into answering questions, to touch on because you shared the story about your interactions with management, with leadership of 3M as you're beginning this journey and your role. If you could elaborate more and share the transparency, the true commitment, and how important it is for leadership
Yeah.
of an organization to commit to what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, great question, Wafa. I think there is no way, and I say this with humility, but with confidence. I don't believe 3M would be able to do anything that I spoke about without the commitment from leadership. And that is critical. Our CEO himself, Mike Roman, was and continues to be today personally committed to our equity ambition, right? He was in the room, right? He was a key person in the room that said we needed to have a leader in this space. And then in one of my very first meetings with him in my those first 30 days in this role, when I met with him, he says, Garfield, make sure when we do this work, we do it in a way that doesn't fizzle and has a staying power. Those were the words of our CEO. And so critical to give me the confidence that one, we were serious about this work, and two, man, how incredible it is that our CEO is saying leverage the entire capability of our company and bring it to bear to make a difference for folks in our company, but those in our communities as well. And so the organization aligns, right? When you have a CEO that's so committed to this work and sees the value of the work, it makes a difference. I now have the cover that I needed to go forth and do the work that was necessary. It's only because of that why I could have 150 people assigned to this work all over the company from just about every function that were participating in this work. And these were 150 people that have and had full-time jobs. And the reason why we're able to show up and deliver is that we have people who were passionate and they align that passion to purpose-driven work. So you'll often hear me say, where passion meets purpose, anything is possible. And that's what I was able to witness, and I continue to this very day, to see people with very demanding jobs show up to do this work with their passion aligned to purpose. So hopefully that was helpful, Wafa.
Absolutely. This is really awesome. Thank you, Garfield. One of the questions that we received in the chat is from Amanda, and I'll just say a few words about Amanda. She works for Rochester Area Foundation here in Rochester, and she leads diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioners convenings as kind of a support group for DI practitioners. So I always wait for her questions because she always comes up with some really good questions. So her question is, she said, I am curious about what primary mechanisms has 3M used to foster that mindset shift with your employees, as well as building in an equity lens in daily practices?
Yeah, great question, Amanda. Thank you. Here's, in the early moments after George Floyd was murdered, I think um, I mentioned that leadership matters, right? Our CEO hosted a town hall, as many CEOs did, so that wasn't unique to 3M. The candor that came out of that was something I've not seen before. But building on that, one of the things that we did was we had these racial inclusion advocacy sessions that were happening. And they started with all the leadership teams. So everyone that reported to our CEO and their leadership were meeting to really talk about this topic called racial inclusion. Because we need, again, everyone comes with their own lived experience. We all have our biases, me included, right? We're not immune from bias. It's the nature of the world we live in and how we were brought up. There's inherent bias. And so I can recall vividly, I was facilitating one of these sessions, and I was just blown away to see this executive in tears, not only hearing the stories of those that were in the room. It was a virtual room because we're still in the thick of COVID at the time, but also hearing that individual being so vulnerable by saying, I didn't realize I was part of the problem. So to have a leader be so vulnerable in front of his team, I have never seen that ever in any place that I have worked. And I think that was the starting point of creating cultural, and racial consciousness, right, across our leadership team layers. And then those kind of conversations expanded throughout the company and even internationally as well, in particular places like Brazil that have so many challenges too with things like racism. And so to have those dialogue, I think were very incredibly important. And then we have employee resource groups, or ERGs, right? They took the mantle and it just mushroomed. And those conversations continued to happen. Mind you, they were structured because we had trained facilitators, because you wanted to make sure that folks understood how to even engage in this kind of dialogue. So we had trained facilitators who would actually facilitate these conversations all over the company. So that's one piece around the mindset. From an embedding in the DNA, I think the company decided, okay, let's set some goals. Let's set some goals. Those goals were externally communicated. So guess what? Can't hide from it now, right? And so TRIM is about, if we set goals, who doesn't want to achieve a goal they've set, right? And so that then also gave me and the work that, the teams and the work that we did to then begin to think about what are the behavioral indicators that were going to be necessary for us to be able to deliver on the commitments. So remember I said, our CEO said, make sure we do the work in a way that doesn't fizzle. So over the past year and a half, we created sustained plans, right? How do we sustain this work? So for each of those work streams you saw me list on one of those earlier slides, there's a plan that we've created that says, this is the purpose of the work. These are the outcomes we want to achieve. Now, who are the key roles? Who are the key actors? Who are the key individuals in the company that can help us to enable delivering on those outcomes? And the next level is, what are the behaviors that we expect to see from them? Because if folks aren't modeling the behavior, then we're not going to get to the outcomes. And so it was an added dimension to, okay, we have KPIs, we've got metrics and all of those things. So many times we miss the behavioral piece. And behavioral indicators are leading indicators of whether or not we're going to win the day or not. And so for the entire body of work, there are these behavioral indicators. And yes, we have the scorecards and whatnot as well, and KPIs built in to all of these, what we call our sustained plans. And just 2 weeks ago, I actually met with our CEO and says, okay, this is the journey that we've taken to sustain the plan. And folks know now, right? These are the expectations. And we're also going to be auditing, right? All of these sustained plans on an annual basis. Again, we want to make sure it sticks. It has the staying power. If you turn away, we want to make sure that it's still happening and folks are, we're being held accountable to delivering. So again, it starts from the goals we've set for ourselves and we've published them externally. Now we've got to do the work to make sure that we're delivering. So that was a lengthy answer, but hopefully that was helpful.
No, that was very helpful. Thank you, Garfield. The next question we received is from Dan. What didn't work or was really difficult as you scaled the work that informed or redefined your strategies?
That was a great question, Dan. I think this is not all panacea. This is hard work. And the reality is there are naysayers. There are individuals that don't want this to be successful. There are individuals that will create a smokescreen every now and again to say, you know, no, you're focusing on this group. What about me? Right. So we've gotten, a number of those. Um, and so there have been challenges along the way. Um, every step of the way, they've been a challenge, but we kept moving through. I think that's kind of the mindset is we keep moving. We keep moving forward. Sometimes we might need to go around. Sometimes we might need to go under. Sometimes we might need to go over a situation, but we keep moving forward. And so this work is not without detractors and distraction and, the added challenge from the politics of the day has also raised its head over the last 3.5 years, threatening some of the very fabric of these efforts that we're trying to lead. But our leadership continues to say, this work is important. Let's move forward. And that's what we do. Because I don't want to spend too much time going into the details of the things that didn't go right, because we all know that things are gonna not be smooth. I think the challenge is, or the opportunity is, how do we move forward when those roadblocks show up?
And the next question is, can you share a specific breakthrough story of an individual or partner company that was impacted in a positive way because of your work?
Yeah, great question. I'm gonna blank on the name of the company, but again, if you search for our most recent global DEI report, you will find the example. Now, I mentioned the Game Changer program that we had, and we had a number of companies that have come through. They've articulated, okay, yep, I sign up. These are the challenges that I'd like for you to help me um, referring to. These are the challenges that I want you to help me navigate. And so we were able to help them unlock their particular challenge. And I think the feedback that we've received is now that they do feel that their challenges have been understood. They have been able to overcome those with some of the capabilities that 3M offers, and now they can continue to grow their business. And one of those businesses is part of that 75% that I referenced, that more than doubled their book of business with 3M, right? Because it was just a challenge to be able to scale. So we're doing a couple of things. We're helping this company unlock a particular challenge. We're helping this company be more aware, right, of who are the key individuals at 3M and our sourcing organization that need to know about the capabilities that they now have, and put them in front of the opportunities so that it can be more competitive when bids are out there for them to respond to. But forgive me for not having the specifics, but I do know if there's time I can go and search it up here on our DR. There's just so many examples. It's hard sometimes to keep them all straight. But I do know we also publish some of those examples in our DEI report.
It would be great to maybe, because we usually share the presentation with our audience along with the YouTube link afterwards. So if you would like to share with us any of those links or reports, we'll be more than happy to distribute them to everyone.
Awesome.
And one thing that you've mentioned earlier in your presentation, Garfield, which connected to something that we're doing in our community here, when you mentioned that 3M made a commitment of $50 million, and that it worked with community leaders from different communities into how to plan, for the $50 million commitment. Which it connects to something that we have developed here in our community, which is community co-design. We like to encourage the participation of community members in decision making.
Right.
Um, did 3M ever go back to the community leaders or the communities and kind of see like checkpoints on, are we doing what we should be doing? Is this achieving the results that we were hoping for?
Yeah. Yeah. So two quick ways to answer that question is the 3M Community Coalition is still in existence today. It wasn't a one-off that disappeared right after the first meeting. You know, there are quarterly meetings. I think now we're down to probably twice or once a year. But for that same reason, we've got to have accountability, right? So we brought the leaders together. And when we brought the first team together, I remember stepping into that conversation. And, you know, as a science-based company, we kind of have in the back of our minds, you know, what we can do and what we're uniquely capable to do. And we're in the first meeting, and one of the community leaders said to us, well, 3M, if children are hungry, they can't learn. If children have unstable housing, they can't learn. So it's great. 3M is a science-based company and STEM is a big part of what you do. Keep doing it. But these are basic needs. And if these basic needs are unmet, they'll never get to the point of leaning into the STEM careers. And so that then is something that 3M had to take to heart. We now had to flip the rough idea we had in our mind and say, you know what? We're going to ensure that a portion of that 50 million is targeted at meeting basic needs of children in their communities. And that's what we did. If we never got that feedback, we perhaps would have gone down a path that 3M. So that's why it was important to listen and truly listen. And through that listening, we're able to understand the needs of community, and then we could act. Then we could deploy the funds. And our community partners through whom we deploy the funds, to answer the second part of the question, they're accountable now to be able to share back with us via annual reporting how those funds were deployed, the number of lives they've impacted, how they've shifted their own systems. Because they always, this work is about systems change as well. It's not just about passing through the dollars, you know, and then sending a check into the community. Systems needed to shift, right? And it's because some of those systems are shifting, why we could see an almost $3 social return for every dollar we've invested. So things like that are things that we're sharing with our community leaders every year, because we got to be accountable, right? And so part of it is being transparent, and transparency drives accountability. So great question.
Awesome. Amanda commented earlier about the question that you answered, that she appreciates you going through the details of the answer, and then she also mentioned that social return of $3 on the dollar is amazing, which that amazed me as well too. How is that measured, Garfield?
Could you say that again, Wafa? I was reading one of the questions. Could you say that again, please?
Yeah, the social return on the dollar investment, like for every dollar that 3M is investing, it's about $3 social return. How is that measured? If briefly you would mention to us, what
Yeah.
are some indicators that you're measuring to understand the return of the dollar?
Got it. So what we do is, again, there is a model that that was created in partnership with Ecotone. So that's the name of the the nonprofit organization that partnered with us on this work. And there is a model that has we have all these activities, we have inputs, we have all these activities, we have outcomes that we have, and we have impact that we see in community, right? And so there's this model that has been created. As a result of this model, there is a form that each of our nonprofit partners then need to complete to help us understand given the focus, right? So if we, I referenced Ojama Place for formerly incarcerated Black men earlier on the call, right? They now needed to say, right, how many lives were impacted? How are you deploying those funds to ensure that one of these individuals aren't going to go back into the system, right? And what are the guardrails around that? So it's really a scientific approach using hard data that our nonprofit partners provide to us that's then used to help us determine the social return. So we think about improving quality of life and avoiding healthcare costs. How are those investments helping us to do that? How are those investments helping folks to avoid public assistance, right? Because of how we're deploying those funds. So there's a whole model, right, that is also in our DEI report. I'm going to send you the link because I think it'll be helpful. We don't have the time to really unpack all of the details here, but I'll send you a little because all of what I'm talking about is in the public domain, right? Because we are very committed to transparency. And as I've said, because we're transparent, it drives greater accountability for us internally. And so one thing to remember, it's, we use the partner to help us determine our social return on investment. And there are a number of levers that we're using to help us to determine the social return on investment, and our partners, right, through whom the funds are flow to get to community, they are accountable too to help us understand how those funds are being deployed to get to the outcomes that we want to see.
Great. Thank you so much, Garfield. I know we're about time, and I am looking at the chat to see if there is any additional questions or comments, but we will be providing you all the reports in the presentation that Garfield shared with us today. And I want to end with much gratitude and appreciation of giving us some of your time today to highlight some of 3M's journey. I know as you were sharing those pillars, I think each pillar would need its own episode of the equity series. So consider this as an invitation from our community to share, to come back to the equity series and share more of 3M's journey, because we will all benefit from it. Thank you so much, Garfield, for being with us today.
My
And
delight. Thank you.
yes, thank you. And as we close today, everyone, we would like to extend our gratitude to all of you for joining us in this learning, especially as we near a holiday weekend. We hope that you enjoy the time of rest and connection, and for those traveling, safe travels. As for the fourth, Wednesday in December falls mid-holiday, we will share a pre-recorded session as opposed to a live session. We will share it via email. As well, we will post it on the DMC YouTube channel where you will find today's episode and previous episodes. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the long weekend.